All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Class 5. Today we're going to discuss Chapter 4 in our text, which I'm sure you loved, Language and Education Policy for ELLs, which now we're talking EAL. That's what we want to get used to saying. But the chapter talks about how the policy context surrounding bilingual ed and ELL education has really changed over probably the last century. We'll go over just some key points. The chapter is not long, and what you need to really understand is not long, and a lot of this we covered in the previous courses, but I want to reiterate that you should become familiar with the key terms. Get your index cards, write out those acronyms, write out the definitions, and just become comfortable and familiar. You'll need to know them for the CST, and a lot of them you'll need to know the rest of your life. Even though those acronyms change and change and change, we want to become familiar with them. Okay, so we know right away after reading this chapter that language and education policy in the U.S., especially for ELLs and bilingual students, is extremely complicated because we really don't have a federal policy in place. A lot of the decisions are made at the state level, which really isn't that bad because each state is so different and our needs are different. Our needs are much different here in New York than the needs in, for example, Arizona. But that complicates policy that's put in place. The book, of course, introduces the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA. You should just understand that that was really enacted in 1965 and to better serve the needs really of lower income students and target students that really were underperforming. Out of that came the Bilingual Education Act, which is really my generation. It was put in place really to make sure that students of different backgrounds were, their needs were met in public school. And that came about in 1968. We called it Title VII, and we still call it Title VII. You might hear people say about Title VII, but it was the Bilingual Education Act. And what it did, it provided grants to school districts to better meet the needs of their EAL students through, whether it was through materials, through teacher training, through hiring better qualified teachers. So it took a real move for our students who really were not being met to saying, hey, you know what, we have these students, we need to meet these needs, and this is why Title VII was so important. It was in effect for a long time. It was from 68 through 2002, I believe, until, of course, we have No Child Left Behind, which comes in 2001. And I know this is hard to believe, but in 2001, when this passed, we were all excited. I had been teaching here for a number of years. Many people supported it. It was a bipartisan vote. There was a huge push on it. We thought it was going to be great. Oh, we're bringing the standards up. Everyone's going to be performing at the same level. We're going to put standardized tests in. Teachers are going to have something, really to aim for. Everyone thought it was great until we put it in place and we realized, okay, this is not effective. And No Child Left Behind, of course, you've learned about it in other places, really became problematic, that teaching became teaching towards the test. Performance of teachers really was based on the performance of the students, and especially for students, for our EAL students, that reflected on the teachers. That was really challenging. So No Child Left Behind is in place for quite a while and is taken over by, and that was that was under Bush, and taken over by Race to the Top with Obama. And you'll see Race to the Top comes up here on page 77, and RTTT, make sure you know the acronym. It's just like No Child Left Behind. You should know that acronym of NCLB. And Race to the Top, what Race to the Top did was Race to the Top wanted to reform the problems with No Child Left Behind, and so it adopted standards. It had recruiting initiatives and retaining initiatives to keep qualified teachers. It increased transparency by building data systems to measure student success. It supported intervention strategies. The biggest problem was that it still tied teacher performance evaluations to student test scores. And this is the challenge, is that if the student did badly, then the teacher was evaluated on that. And that continued to be a challenge. So even though it did make some positive changes, the real problem still existed and raced to the top. The chapter reviews the state-led initiatives and consortia, the Common Core state standards. And of course, all of you know Common Core standards, which actually we've moved into now next generation standards, which you'll be using, I think, in 2 weeks to start your lesson plans. And again, this is the idea that a number of states came together and said, hey, let's put these Common Core standards in place. Let's have our students, our teachers try to reach these student standards, and our students try to reach these standards. And I think it does for Common Core for New York State's on page 83. You'll see that we're there under Common Core. The challenge is, though, under Common Core standards, there were no standards for EAL students. So we were using standards from 20 years ago to write our lesson plans, where other students had currently adopted the WIDA standards. That's World-Class Instructional Design Assessment. And New York State doesn't use WIDA. Many other states do. We do not. So for New York State, when we write our plans for our ELLs, for any ELL lesson plan, EAL lesson plan, we will use the next generation standards, but we have to indicate we want to include content-specific goals as well. Sorry, I just got distracted. It's hard. I had to remember where I left off and where I didn't leave off. So, for example, if you're teaching a math lesson or a science lesson, you want to make sure you include those. But we'll talk more about that once we get to planning. And then I'll put up the next generation. I should have met to you, most of you, last year in our other class in 359. Okay, then there's, let's see, then we have important court decisions. We know that, of course, we all remember Brown versus Board of Education that actually made separate but equal unconstitutional, and really insisted on equal educational opportunities, and that helped provide opportunities for our ELLs, because many of them were in schools where they were not getting the same opportunities as their majority counterparts. Also, we come across Lau versus Nichols, and we remember this is in California, where the Chinese students were just immersed, sink or swim, into the English-only curriculum. And they sued and they won, and it was great. The ruling said that there's no equality of treatment merely by providing students with the same facility and textbooks and teachers if they can't access the language, which of course they couldn't. So that's why bilingual ed really made a push there. Okay. Oh, rant, sorry. Hold on, let me try my light. Okay, I think really that's the key components of the chapters that you need to know. I mean, as long as you read it and you understand that Title VII was Bilingual Education Act, that No Child Left Behind really focused on standardized testing, and they really wanted the English-only movement. I can't remember if I mentioned that, where it really was English only. Let's try to get these students up and running and competitive with their peers. So we're going to focus on that. And then we had Race to the Top that took place. But even though it did make some improvement, the ELL concerns remained, with a focus on accountability for the teachers in these high-stake tests. We have, of course, Common Core standards. where states come together to really group and decide we're going to have these similar standards to help students meet their targets. And the fact that it's a reminder that most decisions of education really are at state level, which I'm in support of. And I think that's it. If you have any questions, you can I guess email me questions, but I think that covers what you really need to know for the policies for education. All right, short chapter this week, guys. Then I'll see you next week. You'll read chapter 5, and I put up your agenda. All right, I'll see you soon. Miss you all. Oh, and I had to find a class, and we're gonna. Oh, Friday. Thanks for those who showed up Friday. It was great to see you in person. I wanted to meet next Monday, but we don't have off because, of course, we celebrate Columbus Day. We'll see if we can find another day soon. I'll let you know. Thanks. Talk to you soon. Bye.